I shouldn't have that.
Guys, welcome back to the Blended Garden. Yes, hold that cup up. Namaste, lovely ones, as we say. So we're back, and as I always say, I'm not here for the likes, I'm not here for the subscriptions, but if you would like to like, please feel free. I'm here to always connect with people that I feel connected to, and so sometimes I'm here and sometimes I'm not. So I'm here today with an amazing woman. We'll get started. Her name is Tanja Diamond. I'll let her introduce herself in a minute, but I do want to take a minute to say that now we have a hard copy of the Blended Golden. We've been spending the last 2 years doing it on ebook. Tomorrow, I have a big event in Harlem. I'm going to be reading the book. I have my movement person. We're doing a whole spiel of the Blended Garden, so I'm excited about that. All right, well, let's get to it. So today we are talking to Miss Tanja Diamond, and she is an exceptional human being. And we are going to be talking about neurodiversity today. So we'll get right into it. Tanja, first, let me tell you, I always talk about how I meet people. So this summer, I'm a teacher. I like to rest my body, Tanja, but I don't like to rest my mind. So I was in my house out in Niagara by myself cooking, and I said, let me just see what's going on out there in the YouTube world or whatever. And I came across Thought Leader. And this is how Tanja and I met. So basically, Thought Leader, I'll let Tanja explain if she likes, but basically I am in training, and Tanja is one of my wonderful coaches to hopefully one day lead a TEDx talk. Tanja is very clear about that, TEDx talk. So, and it's all about diversity, inclusion, which you guys know, this is my, my thing. So I met Tanja through practicing for one of my thought coaches, and she's so fired up about neurodiversity. And I know on this channel we talk a lot about inclusion and diversity, dealing with race and culture, but we sometimes also talk about the differences of human beings. And so when Tanja was like, I would love to talk, I was like, I would love to. So you're here. Yay, Tanja. All right, so that's my spiel. I'm going to shut up so we can chat. So Tanja, introduce yourself.
Tanja Diamond, autistic polymath. And I do a ton of stuff. And for those of you who don't know what a polymath is, I'm that person that you say, what don't you do? What don't you know? Are you always right? Yeah, I'm that annoying person. That one. That's me. And so in these 62 years I've been alive, I am like pretty deep dive into the things that really interest me. And when I'm interested in something, I go all the way. I read scientific abstracts and research papers for fun. I'm that kind of nerd geek too, so don't watch sci-fi a lot though, so I don't qualify in that end, but yeah. And so my current deep dive is into the world of TEDx's and speaker coaching and things like that. And so
you're amazing. Let me tell you, people, if you want to get on a stage and you have a wonderful idea and you just feel like, the thing that's stopping me is just getting out there, this is the woman to talk to. She will strip your talk down, put it together. We were online last night. I was like, oh my gosh. I think I was recording your notes for like almost over 10 minutes. It was awesome. So anyway, sidebar. So go ahead.
Yeah, just that. But my big thing, I love to solve problems. So what I am really is a life and business strategist. And I use my strategic mind that's curious about things and how, where are the problems and how to fix them in any disciplines, because I've been a helicopter pilot. I've owned equestrian centers, hair salons, underwater video company, master scuba diver, octopus research. I mean, like,
you can go on and on. Let me ask you something about that. Let me ask you something about that, because I'm one of those people. I used to call myself a jack of all trade, master of none. But now as I get older and I'm learning more about neurodiversity, I'm learning through even my son, I'm like, oh, maybe that's why. So do you think that all those wonderful gifts you have that you can actually implement and manifest into something productive? Because some people just, they try a million things and it just goes to pot. Do you think that is linked? First, let's talk about what neurodiversity is to you. And then let's talk about if you think that.
Yeah. Okay. So basically, I found out I was autistic and then got tested. I was pegged as somebody who had a learning disability. Obviously, I'm verbal. And a lot of things that people don't understand about autism is that it's not a spectrum of worse to less.
Right.
It's basically, you have to check all 7 boxes. You have to have a problem, functional or development problem in 7 spectrums, not good to bad. It's not a little bit autistic or a lot autistic.
Right.
I happen to have great verbal skills.
Yeah, I was going to say, speaking, what?
Right, exactly. And so a lot of people think, autism, inability to speak, or autism, inability to make connections, subtle connections. I am very good at subtle. I read people's faces like they're screaming. So a lot of the ideas. But for the longest time, it was developmentally delayed until I was reading Encyclopedia Britannicas at home when I was 4. But when I went to school and they cut all the words apart into the alphabet, I had no idea what anybody was trying to do.
Interesting.
I'd snapshot pages. I was reading over 4,000 words a minute.
So part of it is that you are a visual learner.
No, there's no, actually, that's all been debunked. Visual
Tell me about debunking, because we talk about that all the time.
That is like, it's what we get used to. It's what we're interested in, because you can go look debunking the learning styles and you'll find a lot of info on that.
Right, because then of course things have changed because we keep learning and growing.
Right, exactly. So basically, I had what you would consider an eidetic memory, meaning I snapshot photoed stuff. And then when I'd go to school, when they had everything torn apart, because I puzzle, I look at things in patterns. So reading was a pattern, but it was reading pages. Once you took me out of that and tried to teach me the alphabet, I had no idea what was going on at all.
Wow.
So they thought something was wrong. And then when I see real things and I see a picture of that thing, they don't look the same.
Okay.
So
now it's the same for, because sometimes we like to, and this is what I love about the blended garden, is that we like to put things in boxes when we don't understand it, instead of saying, no, this is a variation of that, but it is not that.
Yeah. And so no, not everybody with autism has the way my brain works. And I'm also what they now established as what's called 2E, which is twice exceptional. I call it twice screwed. I'm super smart and smart enough to know that there's a whole bunch of things that are messed up. And when I go to look for help, screwed because people aren't smart enough to help me. And I know that sounds arrogant. That's not actually autistic. That's just me.
I get it. Listen, this is how I watch TV. I go through channels and I'm like, this is stupid. This is stupid. This is interesting. You know what I mean? Like you can't entertain, like you've got to kind of come to a different kind of level to catch my attention. And I get it. And it's not, and you said, it's arrogant. And I know sometimes I feel that way. And, it's a very isolated, I'm not autistic, but my brain works in a different way. I'm more on the ADHD / other stuff, but, I don't know. It's like you put it all in this, pretty little box and you say, this is what it is. And then people feel, I guess they can help it, change it, but it's like, no, just let it be. Like, this is who we are. And it's not arrogant. Like you said, it feels arrogant. And I get that way. It feels a little arrogant, but the truth of the matter is that's just how your mind works. And I'm 53. I love how you put your age out there. Thank you. Because I do want to talk about the timeline of how things have changed. But I'm 53 and I used to feel that way too. I go out with friends and I'm like, oh my God, can we talk about something that's like meaningful, that's like thoughtful, like I'm getting to know, and you feel like you're arrogant, but no, and then you learn as you grow up, this is how my mind works. So let's talk about a little bit, do you want to talk more about that?
Give me one moment. So basically, in all the diagnoses that I've had in my life, gifted, autistic, ADHD, OCD, bipolar, and several probably others, what I realized through all of this is basically trauma was accentuating all sorts of things that were giving me, leading people to give me this diagnosis. I had a lot of childhood trauma. So when I figured out, and my big thing strategy, obviously, like therapy doesn't help, this doesn't help. I came up with the understanding that our nervous system in our somatic body, there's 5 innate systems we have: energy, chemical, emotional, physical, mental. These 5 innate systems pretty well rule everything. And if we don't understand how they work from an evolutionary point of design, whether you believe in God or evolution, when we're created in the womb, we're created in a specific pattern. Trauma infiltrates all of those. And it gives you every single symptom that you could get a diagnosis for.
Wow.
That mimics ADHD, a lot of these things, right? So on a quest to figure out how to be in the world better, right? How to communicate better, be in the world better, do my job better, all these things. I basically healed a ton of childhood trauma. And through that, nobody would diagnose me with any of those things now.
Wow.
Yeah. I am autistic, and that might still get a diagnosis. And I am these, but most of the things, the traits, the behaviors, the brain issues were actually trauma, deep-seated trauma.
You know, it's funny because when you first started talking, you were talking about how it's a checklist. Like you have to check off certain boxes to say this is what it is. And although we're not talking about this disorder, I do a lot of research on narcissistic personality disorder, because that builds trauma in many people. And so, you know, it's just so interesting that once you, like you said, once you do your shadow work, as they call it, you find the dark places and you heal them yourself with help. Maybe it's like something like just blooms and opens up, and then you can live.
Yeah. Then you can uncover what is your brain different. So I'm
without judgment to yourself or to
Yeah, you heal your trauma. You're left with how your neurological brain works, like the differences, the anomalies in it. And then you're like, this is me, this is how I work. How do I create my world that helps my weaker areas, if you think they're weaker, and builds my strengths.
Right.
And that's how I look at it, very strategically. It's a strategic play. So part of my strengths is that ability to think way outside boxes and, put things together that other people don't put together.
Right.
Awesome sauce. If I'm in a trauma situation, or if I'm in a highly anxious, none of that works.
Right.
Basically, I end up what I call devolving. And if that's insulting to people, I get it. I typically offend people because I'm not very PC.
I've learned to just.
Yeah.
Can I tell you the other day what I said to myself? I said, Jahida, you keep everything in here. You don't let it come out here. and you don't let it go in here.
There you go. Absolutely. And I work at it all the time.
Me too. Every day. 24/7.
I work at, like, how do I create language that is not, painful and hurting it? Because it's never my intent to want to hurt other people. It's my intent to educate. And it's also my intent to be authentic. And sometimes stuff that I feel comes out of my mouth and people are like, I don't like that. And if somebody doesn't like say it, then tell me.
Yeah. It's so funny, that word. You teased me on the thought leader thread when we were talking about the word authentic, like, oh my God, that word is overused. And it's like, it's kind of overused. But, I was thinking the other day, I was like, if I had the time to make another talk, I would call it, I don't want to be authentic.
Yeah, perfect.
My authenticity, you don't want it. You don't want it. And I said, I'm just going to be present. I won't be off, because
love that.
I think the word authentic is like this beautiful and real, everyone can relate to me. But no, authentic is raw. It will, you don't have to be mean. You're not coming out being mean. Like you said, your intention is not, I'm not here to hurt you, but I am here to say it to you straight.
Yeah, that's the only way I roll. But I had kept all of this under wraps for decades, not because I was shamed or anything like that, but just because it didn't seem relevant. And then 2 years ago, I realized, people don't know I'm autistic. When the neurodivergency really started coming out is what happened. I'm seeing it everywhere. I'm seeing all this and I'm like, people have a very narrow viewpoint, especially around autism, right? What that looks like. And I'm not doing my fellow autistics any favors by not having that front and center somewhere. So I remember on Facebook, I'm like, by the way, peeps, you know, any of you have figured it out, you know, I'm autistic. Of course, I ran into then people going, you can't say that, you have to say person with autism. I'm like, yeah, as a medical professional, that's a good idea, but I'm the autistic one. I get to say I'm autistic. Don't like tell me how to label myself.
My story.
So I came out with it, and it was the craziest thing. People who've known me for decades had the weirdest questions like, oh, wow, but you're so successful. I'm like, oh, okay, that's good thing I am saying this. That was interesting. Then somebody else is like, do you have to disclose that to your clients? I said to them, do you have to disclose that you're an idiot? Then somebody said to me, oh, that explains why you're such an asshole. And I said, no, I was being an asshole to you. That wasn't autistic.
Right. I was being very intentional about.
All right. Yeah. And somebody said, oh, I understand now why you're so direct. And I said, or where you know, you don't have a filter. And I said, oh, Lord, no. I am the most diplomatic person on the planet. If you want to see what's really happening in here, nobody will talk to me ever again. So has been very, very interesting, even including some people who all of a sudden didn't find me as credible. Like 20 years, all the stuff I do, everything I know. And then because I have autistic polymath written everywhere now, right? Some people that are like, oh, well, I wonder if I should continue coaching with you. Like there's people who have like transformed their entire lives, value it. I'm like, oh, why? Well, you know, you're autistic. And I'm like, oh, that's person with autism to you. No.
Right. Use the right term.
Yeah, no, I'm just like, yeah.
Let's talk about that, because now I'm an early childhood educator. So I want to shift to the development of children, because when we see children that may have these different developmental challenges, the first thing is, oh, you know, I've heard teachers say, what's wrong with that kid? You know, what they're doing this, they're doing that. And then, you know, we're 70s and 60s babies. Back then it was like, oh, send her to the special room.
Yeah.
So there was no understanding, there was no language, there were no titles for it, no labels for it.
Oh yeah, there was labels. It was called not doing her best, not paying attention in class, not putting in too much. If Tanja would only care about what she was doing, if Tanja would only try to improve. Oh yeah, there's a lot of what.
Right, exactly. So I want to talk a little bit about gripes, because, you know, as a child, you know, I was that child where, you know, I wasn't understood. I didn't understand what was going on. My parents, we weren't talking about this.
Yeah.
And so, you know, how someone may say, well, oh, you're autistic. So the mentality is it's, I don't want to say less than, but it's a deficiency.
Yeah.
I don't know. Have you ever seen
compromised?
Right, you're compromised, right? Something wasn't put together right inside of you. Have you ever seen that show? It's I wish I could remember. It was an Asian woman. She was a lawyer and she was autistic. Oh my God, I wish I could remember the name. I'm going to send it to you. But it was this Asian woman. She was a lawyer, and no one wanted to mess with her. But because her father knew or had a relationship with the head of the law firm, whatever, they gave her a job. And all the lawyers didn't want to have anything to do with her. But she won every case, because when the lawyers were stumped in court, she knew all the law. I mean, it was like she knew all the law. Right. And so, you know, it's this thinking of, you can't do the job. But no, honey, I probably can do the job a little bit more thorough, a little bit more out of the box. I may be able to give you more than you even expected because of this thing. And with, you know, in early childhood, schools are set up where, you know, before you even start, you're put in a box, you're put in a chair. You know, so I'm very lucky and blessed to work in a school where we like learn in, I call it fields. You can, and this is why I love working where I work, because I can bring all my neurodiversities and craziness, and it's accepted and it's loved and it's appreciated. And so I don't know where I'm going with all of this. This is part of my neurodiversity. I'm like all over the place. but Tanja will bring me back.
That's why I'll bring. So if we were coaching right now, I'd be like, oh, so I'm going to cut you off right now, and I'm going to ask you, what's your point?
What did you tell me the first time? Land the plane, Chiquita.
That's right. That's right.
So let's land the plane around everything I said, based on, how people see this neurodivergent.
Yeah. Well, especially when it comes to autism, because autism has the 7 different boxes that you have to check to be autistic. And within that, there's spectrums within those boxes, like communication. Okay. Nonverbal to hyperverbal, right? So it's all nuanced, right? Next box, let's say it's kinesthetic, or basically, how you move in the world. Once again, not moving, hyper movement.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you could be here on one, here on another. That's why it's called the spectrum, not because it's less, more or less. So whereas some people they used to call them savants, which is somebody who deep dives, like the attorney you were talking about right there, has pretty well absorbed everything. As a polymath, I do that. Like, I'm not a jack of all trades. I'm a master of thousands. I'm certified in thousands of modalities. I've been lucky. I haven't had to work full time in my life. I made my first million at 24, and pretty much I'm just like, so awesome sauce. I've also lost a lot because I take risks.
Right.
But I know how to make it again, so I'm not worried. So, but so where would my weakness, if you want to call it a weakness, where do I not do well, is that my nervous system believes that everything, like if you looked at me funny, like I like you and we're walking along and all of a sudden you turned and tilted just a certain way with your head, my nervous system would go, we're all about to die. The entire planet's about to become extinct. We're all dying and it's all my fault. So the first thing that would happen is I would go into this emotional, enormous crisis, meltdown. Now, this is where understanding how to manage your nervous system makes me not be like that all the time. But that's where you see like these meltdowns that some people with autism have, like just total, like you don't know where it came from, but they are like
even children.
Out. Yes, of course. That's what I would do as a child. Before I had control over my nervous system, I was either like, that's why the bipolar thing came, because I would get very sad and I'd get super freaking happy and I would not modulate a lot in between.
Right.
I'm not bipolar. I'm autistic, but nobody knew that.
Right.
So emotional variability, emotional stability, let's just say, that can be very tough. Once I learned to manage my nervous system, that's not hard. I still have the hit because you can't control your chemistry until the moment after it happens. Okay, so that's one of those things. So in relationship, love bomb, I'm like, I'm going to change everything. Yeah, right. Oh my gosh. Yeah. People would think I was a narcissist for my love bombing. By the way, I really miss my narcissist who love bombed me. Can I just say that I was with a narcissist and I missed that love bombing so hard. That was the best ever.
How our brains are wired. Yeah, I'm learning. They asked one time I was in a meeting, they said, what did you learn this year? I said, I learned that I will now match the room and match the energy. Because I'll walk into a space, hey, how are you? And I'm like in your living room and it's coming from a wonderful place. My brain works like that. I want to connect. I want to,
Right.
Yeah.
And so the other thing that I have is that thing that annoys people, which is relating. So if you tell me a story, I'll tell you my story about your story. Like, I'll share and so in a relationship, frequently people are like, I don't feel like you're hearing me. Like my daughter, who's also autistic, will say, I don't want your story. I don't know. You're not listening to me. Well, I actually am. I could repeat back every single word you just said to me, but I'm working to relate by showing you that I have a relatable
right.
story.
And people say, right, that bringing back that narcissism, people say, oh, you just keep bringing it back to yourself. It's like, no, I'm trying to connect and relate because I get it. I get, you know?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So that would be another weakness or point that I've had to work on. Diplomacy, not saying everything that I'm thinking. Another thing I've had to work on.
Right.
And so even though I'm direct, that's the result of a lot of discipline to be direct while considering what I'm saying and not just unfiltered say it.
Let me ask you this. What would you, I'm looking down only because I found it's called Extraordinary Attorney Woo.
Okay.
I'll send it to you, but you got to watch it. But let me ask you this. What would you say to a parent who has a child and they're seeing some of these things? Because I'll tell you a quick story. You know me, I'm a storyteller. So I have this little bark and I bought it to this talk because the day I was walking around the corner, they have a little woods, and I saw this father walking with his like little 2-year-old child, and I'm a teacher, so when I see children, I'm like, hey, blah, blah, blah. And the little boy immediately went to a tree and he was studying the tree and picking up and then he found one of those little lantern flies. And I looked, I said, wow, he's very observant of the world. And he said, well, he's autistic. So we got into this whole conversation. We exchanged numbers because I told him I've worked with severely autistic children. And I think he wanted to follow me home. No, and I'm just kidding. Like, help me. And I have so much respect for new parents. And that are bad, learning how to navigate this whole world. We have like 10 minutes, so I'm gonna stop talking. But what would you like say to a parent like that if they needed support, help? Maybe they don't know all the terminology. Like, how would you help them? Or
yeah, that's really tough because of course parents are scared. What does that mean? Excuse me. Most of the time, if you feel like something is wrong, not normal, I'm air quoting, follow your instinct about that. Like there's an intrinsic knowledge in our DNA. We don't need books to tell us developmental milestones. Like we already know that there's something seemingly interesting. Like when I had a baby at 42, I didn't read one child book. I didn't read one motherhood book. I didn't read one child development book. I was like, I'm going to pay attention. So in paying attention,
that's great, right? Pay attention. Go ahead, keep going.
Yeah, sorry. So in paying attention to my child, I noticed things like she seemed very needy, which is fine, of physical contact all the time, but no eye contact. Like when we breastfed her, she wasn't like, oh, it's supposed to be this moment where she would avert, her eyes would be about right here or right here.
Interesting.
I'm like, well, that's curious because I didn't like eye contact, but I didn't want to be touched when I was a kid. She'd cry if she was restrained at all, like really cried to the point where she would throw up.
Right. Oh, wow.
And so car seat, I actually had to hold her in the car. I kept thinking, oh, we're going to die. I'm going to kill my child one day, but she would throw up. If I tried to put her in a car seat, she'd lose her mind. And so there were these things that just seemed like over the top.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I know.
And so I knew pretty well. And then when she started reading, she was clearly dyslexic. She read all the time, but I could see her working stuff out. And one day she said, she was only 4. I said, well, what are you doing? And she goes, well, I'm noticing that I have problems with certain letters. And I'm like, really? And she goes, yeah, but I figured it out. She goes, dog. I know dog. And I know what dog looks like. And I know what boy looks like, right? Dog, boy. And so I'm just memorizing where the sticks are. And so nobody would ever label her as dyslexic. She figured that out at 4. At 2, she had an existential crisis and told me, Mama, one day I'm going to die and you're going to die. At 2, she's having these conversations that are just like,
right.
So clearly she's gifted. And autistic. She'd melt down because things weren't fair.
Right.
Like she gave a blue scarf to somebody because there was not another pink one, and the little girl wanted the pink scarf.
Right.
So she gave the girl her pink scarf, gets in the car later and loses her mind. I'm like, what's wrong? I wanted the pink scarf, but honey, you gave it away. And she goes, I know. And her sense of fairness and caring for somebody else, she gave away the thing she wanted, and now she was losing her cookies.
Wow.
So
So
these, like, yeah.
That's interesting. So we have a few minutes. In a couple of minutes, like how have you seen the development? Because I look at my son who was diagnosed with ADHD when he was small, and all that big stuff. He's I mean, now he's a completely different kid. He's 15. He's doing 5 AP honors classes. Like, how have you watched have you noticed the development changes in a couple?
Well, I think what happened was by me understanding that she like sensory, she'd put on clothes and then freak out and wouldn't let me take them off, but just run around like a dervish, even though the solution was just take it off. That her sensory input was high, like she had overly sensitive sensory input. And so I worried, is she ever going to be able to wear clothes? Is she ever going to be able to she couldn't layer anything? Oh, it was a scene. I just let her be with whatever clothes. She wore fuzzy pajama pants for 2 years to school. I didn't care. She wanted to wear the same thing all the time. I don't care. You start to realize that your idea of how things should be is going to create a bigger problem than if you are flexible. Flexibility. Yeah.
And I was just gonna tag on to that before we close off. That what you just said, you just let it be, and that's really what my whole blended garden idea, mindset, what I'm really trying to put out into the world and into educators is, we're all individuals, we're all learning different, we're just a big jambalaya of humanity, and you just gotta let it be, and that's how you learn the best. Like, if my teachers in the 70s just let me be me, I was writing books. I remember I wrote a whole book. It was like 10 pages, pictures, a whole story. And it was in some class. And I remember the teacher snatched it out of my hand, ripped it up in front of me.
Oh, yeah.
And, this is how I was learning. I'm a wordsmith. I love words. So yeah, let it be, let it grow. And that's what I do in my garden, the blended garden. I just let everything kind of grow as it grows. And we see the beauty that happens. And you are beautiful. And what you bring to the world is beautiful through Thought Leader, through all your other amazing things you do. And how boring the world would be if everyone was the same, so this has been amazing. I wish we had like 40 days to talk, and we probably
we'll come back and talk about something else if you invite me.
I would love it. So I'm so excited. Again, Tanja, thank you so much for coming on. I'm so excited about this talk that I'm going to work on getting it up and posting it today. Sharing it out, and I'll see you on Thought Leader. Anything else you want to say? Share?
Just basically that ability to get out of your own box so that you can embrace other people's non-box will free you as well.
There you go. Can I just give you a little plug for your new TEDx talk? Is that okay?
Absolutely, yeah.
Tanja is going to be speaking in Zimbabwe. Really quick, what are you going to be talking about? Can you talk about that?
Yes, practicing random acts of inconvenience. I make mugs and bumper stickers for all my talks. And basically we're in a hyper-convenienced world, and we need to practice random acts of inconvenience instead of acts of kindness, right? Because acts of kindness are virtue signaling when you buy the person behind you a Starbucks because you're already in line, versus actually doing something like calling a school and finding out if a kid has an outstanding lunch bill and being on hold for 20 to 30 minutes while you do it. And so by practicing random acts of inconvenience, we're able to build our intolerance muscle, slow down enough to help animals and people in need.
I love it. I'm so inconvenienced by all my stray cats that I rescue. I just posted today on LinkedIn, and I'll say this really quick in the next 2 seconds we have. It was a wonderful video. This little boy came to school, lunchbox was empty. He went to, his lunch was water. He went to the water fountain. He came back, his lunchbox was full. His whole classroom had put pieces of their lunch in his lunchbox. Isn't that awesome? I'll send it to you. Anyway, Tanya, thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, you have a wonderful day and I'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.